The last two times I've been here, we've shared first about how Christ is supreme over creation and also how Christ is supreme in the church. And if that is true, then it should affect how we live. Paul says in another place, since you have received Jesus as your Lord, continue to live in him, rooted and built up in him, strengthened in the faith as you were taught. Always, your theology, what you believe, must affect how you live. They have to be tied together, and that's what we'll be looking at. Problem number one in trying to figure out how we should live is we talk about deceptive teachings that puff you up. In chapter 2, Paul says, see that no one takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy, which depends on human tradition and basic principle of the world rather than on Christ. And later he says, don't let anyone who delights in false humility and the worship of angels disqualify for you the prize. For such a person goes into a great deal about what he has seen, and his unspiritual mind puffs him up with idle notions. The phrase that he's referring to is that you can get taken captive by somebody's bright ideas about what you should do or what you shouldn't do. And he's talking about man-made human traditions. He's not talking about things that are clearly found in the scriptures. There was a book came out a number of years ago now. It was all about a guy who had visions of angels. Did you know that angels are all 6 feet tall and all have curly blonde hair? Bet you didn't know that. Well, according to him, they are. And those are the adult angels. But there were junior angels who wanted to see eye to eye with the adults. So what happened? The junior angels just floated up off the floor, so they were seeing eye to eye with the adult angels. Come on. It just made a big splash for a little while and then fizzled out. Nobody believes that. And sometimes it has to, the rules that one person makes for another has to do with food you eat or how you celebrate certain holidays or don't or whatever. I know a man he was very big on giving up something for Lent, which is fine. But he'd say, what did you give up for Lent? Well, I gave up this for Lent. Therefore, I am a more religious person than you are. Lent, if you do give up something for Lent, it should be an act of devotion between you and God. It should not be, well, I'm more religious than you are. That's all wrong. Those are just bright ideas that somebody has come up with. Jesus several times had controversies with the Pharisees over Sabbath rules. Well, Jesus did not break the Sabbath. He broke the man-made rules that are associated with Sabbath. And Paul says, a person who is doing that, giving out these man-made rules and human rules, they've been cut off from the head, which is Jesus. It's a false humility that really leads to pride and leads to slavery. What really is happening is, I'm laying out the rules. You have to do this, you have to do that, you can't do this because these are my rules and you have to obey my rules. Remember, we're not talking about sinful things here. We're just talking about my rules as to what you are supposed to do. But what Paul says is, God takes all these rules and he takes a nail and nails them to the cross of Jesus. Just gets rid of them so that these homemade rules are no longer in force. Paul says, God forgave our sins, canceling the written code that was against us and stood opposed to it. He took it all, nailing it to the cross, and disarmed the powers and authorities, made a spectacle of them by triumphing over the cross. Those things are really a shadow of the genuine things to come. We don't have to follow the rules that somebody else made. You have to do this because I say so. Again, it's man-made human rules, not scriptural basis. In the next section, Paul talks about some guidelines for holy living. In the passage that I read, you've been raised with Christ. Set your mind on things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Those are the things that should be our focus. Why? Because when Christ appears, we will be in glory with him. And we need to be seeing things that we do in light of eternity. A whole new set of values should be what governs our lives. What are the ambitions? Well, the ambitions of the world are like this. Our ambition should line up with what Christ wants us to do in this world. Our emphasis should be on giving rather than on getting for ourselves. It should be on serving or ministering to others, not ruling somebody else and telling them, you have to do this because I say so. We should be, as the video talked about, we need to be forgiving rather than avenging. I'm going to get even with you. No, that's not what we're supposed to do. We can say of some people, well, music is his life, or sport is his life, or his work is his life. Okay, but for a Christian, Christ should be our life. Sure, we can enjoy sports, enjoy music, do all those kinds of things, but our focus is to be on Christ. What does he want us to do? How do we live to honor him? Not how we can live to get, or can we live to get for ourselves. Paul changes his tone a little bit in the next section of chapter 3, verse 5. He says there are certain things, he used very strong language, certain things that should be put to death out of our lives. He also uses a phrase like, should kill these things. And what he's talking about? He's talking about sinful things that can invade our lives. He lists sexual immorality, impurity, lust, evil desires, greed, anger, malice, filthy language, slander. He said, you people, you Colossians, you used to do these things, but God has forgiven your sins. So make sure those things are killed out of your life. Very strong. King James says mortify. That's kind of a quaint word. Kill these things is what he's saying. Don't let those kinds of things get into your life. He uses this illustration a couple of times. It's like we're having filthy old ragged clothes. Get rid of those and put on a brand new beautiful outfit. He'll talk about what that consists of a little bit later. But Paul says, you've taken off your old self. You've put on a new self, which is being renewed in the image of the Creator. So those things you've got to have no place in the Christian's life. We also can, I guess we can sometimes think of ourselves as superior to others. Well, barriers that can divide us. Paul says there's no Jew nor Greek, circumcised, uncircumcised, barbarian, Scythian, slave free, but Christ is all in all. Now the Greeks, they were superior to everybody else. Why? Well, they had art, they had mathematics, they had engineering, they had sculpture, they had philosophy, they had astronomy. The Greeks had all these things. The planets, for example, they knew that the sun was the center of the universe, and they knew about 6 planets. They all went around the sun. And somehow that teaching got lost over the centuries until the official position of the society was that the earth is the center and everything goes around the earth. And when the astronomers came along, and this is talking in the 1700s, and said, no, the sun is the center of the solar system, they were persecuted. Oh, no, that can't be true. Well, the Greeks knew that the sun was the center of the solar system and everything went around the sun. The Greeks knew the circumference of the earth. And you're talking over 2,000 years ago. So when Columbus headed west, if the Greeks had still been around, they would have been laughing at him. You have no idea how far you're going to have to travel to reach the Indies. Of course, he didn't know that North America and South America was in the way, but besides that, they knew all this stuff. Some of the buildings that the Greeks built, didn't have steel, they didn't have steel cables, didn't have any of that stuff, and sometimes modern engineers are still not sure exactly how the Greeks did it. Brilliant. So they were superior, they thought. Of course, the Jews as well were there. They were God's chosen people, so they had to be superior to everybody else. And then there was cultural barriers or social barriers or slavery. But Paul concludes, Christ is all and in all. It doesn't matter what religion you are or what nationality you are or your cultural background. Those things don't matter. The one person who matters is Jesus. And Jesus binds us together no matter what culture or background or whatever we are. It's all about Jesus. Then Paul comes to the key of what he wants to talk about here, things to be put on. He talked about, a minute ago I mentioned, he's like telling you, putting on a brand new suit of clothes, getting rid of the old things and putting on this new set of clothes. And he says, clothe yourself with, and he lists a number of qualities which should be evident in the life of every Christian. He lists kindness, humility, gentleness, patience, bearing with one another, forgiving one another, putting on love which binds all things. Let divine peace rule in your hearts. Notice that all of those things are how we relate to other people. Are we kind to other people? Are we patient with other people or not? The Christian should not be quite so worried about how efficient you are, or how clever you are, or how industrious you are, or what an orator you are or not. It's what are the qualities that you have that extend to other people that we get to know. One of the phrases that he used is, let the peace of Christ rule in our hearts. Watching a baseball game, there's a close play at first, and thousands of people are in there, get out of there, get out. But he's still standing there on first base. Why can he stand there on first base? Because there was a man there with a dark jacket on who went, so you stay there. The umpire ruled, you're safe. And that's what it should be like for us Christians, that peace is the umpire that guides our hearts. Yes, this is the right, even if things are difficult, this is the right path. The umpire, peace of Christ, is determining that. Another thing Paul urges is he says, let the word of Christ dwell in us, singing psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. Now, but the differences between hymns and songs and spiritual songs, we're not sure exactly what Paul meant by that. He refers to Psalms. Well, that would be the book of Psalms. But some of these other things, well, we're not sure. But he mentioned that the church should be a singing church. You know that there was no singing in the churches up to the time of Martin Luther? None. There hadn't been for centuries. There had been no singing. Now, there were choirs of monks and priests who did chants, but they were chanting in Latin, and nobody understood Latin anyway. But Luther felt that there should be congregational singing. And so he did something that had never been done before, and that is he published a hymn book for the congregation to sing to. Now, the first volume that Luther published, it was a very thin volume. It only had 8 hymns in it. Very small, very thin book. But 4 of those were written by Luther himself, and 4 were written by others. And he wrote to people all over the Lutheran world in Germany saying, if you can write a hymn, that'll be great. He urged some to take the book of Psalms and rewrite them in poetic form so they could be sung. And every year, new editions of this hymn book were published, and it grew all the time. Luther was actually quite a musician. He, in addition to writing hymns, and he wrote dozens of hymns, he also played the lute, which is a guitar-like instrument, and also the flute. And he wrote a whole lot of hymns to be accompanied by this. And especially when a special date comes up during the church year, between Christmas and Easter and Ascension and Pentecost and Trinity Sunday, and all these Sundays came up, he'd write a hymn for it. And there the congregation would sing. That's the guy's brilliant. We only actually have one of his hymns in our hymn book that's been translated into English, and that is A Mighty Fortress. But I wish there were more of them, because I'm sure there's a lot of profound truth in those hymns. A few years ago, there was a trend of some sort that came out. There was a bracelet, particularly the young people wore this bracelet. And it had on the letters WWJD. Now, some of you may remember that bracelet that a lot of people had. Well, what did those letters stand for? What would Jesus do? And if you come to making a difficult decision, should I do this? Should I not do that? What should I do? You look at the bracelet and you think, what would Jesus do here? And that was to be the guiding principle of what we should do or not do. When we sing, and it's important that Paul says it's important here, we may sing songs that worship God, or songs of praise, or songs of testimony, or songs to encourage each other. All those are part of why we should have music in the church and why we sing. Interesting, Luther really believed in musical instruments, and he had a whole lot of musical instruments. Funny enough, the other half of the Reformation movement, which was John Calvin's in Geneva, he didn't believe in instruments. Okay, well, eventually they did. Yeah, okay. I guess instruments are a good thing. So he got instruments in a little later. But whatever it is, all those characteristics that Paul lists of patience and forgiving and all these things, they're all characteristics that should be in our lives all the time, that should affect how we relate to other people. We do these things because of who Jesus is. He is has the supreme position, and we live to bring him glory. We are to obey him. We are to be careful not to be led astray by bright ideas that some person has come up with, and certainly we are certainly to get rid of things out of our lives that belong to the old nature, sinful things that should never be part of our lives. We get rid of those things, and we are certainly to adopt the qualities that bring honor to Jesus, and that also enable us to relate well to each other. We are to minister to each other. We are to encourage one another, and we are to support one another. These are the things that as the title, how should we then live? Well, this is how we are to live, caring for one another, ministering to one another, supporting one another. That's why we're here. That's how we are to live.